Did you know the man who founded Rastafarianism was jailed, declared insane, and had his community destroyed by the government? Leonard Howell, the first Rastafarian, dared to declare Haile Selassie the Messiah and built a self-sufficient commune called Pinnacle. But why did colonial authorities see him as a threat? And how did his radical ideas spark a global movement that still thrives today? This is the untold story of the man who defied empires, faced persecution, and changed the world. You won't believe what he went through to create Rastafari. Born on June 16, 1898 in Clarendon, Jamaica, into an Anglican household, Howell became one of the earliest advocates of the movement. His influence earned him the title of the first Rastafarian. In 1933, he began publicly preaching about the enthronement of Rastafari Makun as Emperor Haile Selassie of Ethiopia, declaring him the long-awaited Messiah, foretold in prophecy. This bold assertion triggered intense backlash, leading to Howell's arrest and a 2-year prison sentence on charges of inciting rebellion against the colonial administration. However, instead of extinguishing his influence, these challenges only strengthened the movement's momentum. Throughout his lifetime, Howell found himself at odds with governmental authorities, religious institutions, and the colonial elite. His philosophy, grounded in anti-colonial resistance and the empowerment of black communities, was perceived as a direct challenge to the established order, prompting efforts by the state to curtail his reach. However, his ideas resonated far beyond Jamaica, inspiring members of the African diaspora and fueling a wave of activism. Determined to establish a sanctuary for his followers, Howell founded Pinnacle in St. Catherine Parish, a self-sufficient commune that became the embodiment of Rastafarian ideals. Despite being the movement's founding figure, he never adopted the distinctive dreadlocks now commonly associated with Rastafari identity. Howell was the eldest of 10 children. His father, Charles Theophilus Howell, worked as a tailor and peasant farmer, while his mother, Clementine Bennett, was an agricultural worker. During World War I, Howell enlisted as a seaman, a profession that took him across international waters, particularly between Panama and New York. While in Harlem, he was exposed to complex racial dynamics and became deeply engaged with Marcus Garvey's Universal Negro Improvement Association, UNI. Inspired by Garvey's philosophy, Howell embraced a radical perspective on black autonomy and self-reliance. His advocacy eventually led to his arrest in the United States, where authorities viewed his empowerment efforts as subversive. He was subsequently deported to Jamaica in 1932. Upon his return, Howell distanced himself from his family due to ideological differences, particularly regarding his reverence for Haile Selassie. In January 1933, he proclaimed Selassie's divine status at Redemption Ground in Kingston, though his message initially struggled to gain traction. By February, he shifted his gatherings to St. Thomas Parish, where his teachings started attracting a growing audience. On April 18, 1933, he addressed around 200 individuals in Trinityville, drawing the scrutiny of colonial law enforcement. While authorities considered his speeches inflammatory, they hesitated to prosecute him, likely fearing that legal action would further amplify his influence. To Howell and his followers, Haile Selassie was the prophesied Black Messiah. His coronation, his claimed lineage from King Solomon and the Queen of Sheba, and the Ethiopian texts, particularly the Kebra Nagast, reinforced this belief. Howell's sermons depicted Ethiopia as a land untouched by Western imperialism, where ancient traditions flourished untainted. He presented Ethiopian culture, language, and heritage as pure, an ideological counterpoint to the pervasive influence of European colonialism. Howell envisioned a future where African heritage would be restored to its rightful significance, challenging the dominance of Western ideologies over African societies. Among his loyal followers, he was known as Gigi Marag, a name that reflected his spiritual and philosophical identity. The title Howell adopted is believed to have origins in Hindi, incorporating aspects such as Gan, symbolizing wisdom, fire weapon, representing virtue, and guru, denoting a teacher, while Marag is linked to notions of grandeur and nobility. This enigmatic persona distinguished him within the Rastafari movement, setting him apart as both a spiritual and ideological leader. In September 1933, Howell organized a gathering in Port Morant, where he strategically used music to engage and captivate his audience. His rhetoric was bold and unrelenting. He openly challenged Christian clergy, accusing them of misleading their congregations and upholding institutionalized falsehoods. He condemned the transatlantic slave trade, arguing that Africa had been unjustly severed from its people, and insisted that black individuals should reconnect with their ancestral homeland instead of accepting Jamaica as their final destination. For Howell, the veneration of Emperor Haile Selassie was deeply interwoven with his vision of black empowerment as a counterforce to colonial subjugation. He often led his followers in renditions of God Save the King, though in his interpretation, the king referred not to the British monarch but to Haile Selassie. His ideology positioned black identity as both a spiritual and moral force, standing in direct defiance of the white supremacist narratives that dominated the era. Known for his authoritative presence and unwavering commitment to his followers, Howell was both a charismatic leader and an uncompromising advocate for black self-determination. In 1939, he established the Ethiopian Salvation Society, an organization designed to pool communal resources to foster financial upliftment among its members. However, the society's ambitions extended beyond economic security. It promoted Christian values, self-sufficiency, and civic responsibility, emphasizing these principles to mitigate accusations of insurrection. Despite this strategic positioning, colonial authorities viewed the society's expanding influence as a threat. By 1940, the Jamaican governor officially banned one of its planned assemblies, citing concerns over the movement's growing international recognition. Howell's impact was not limited to his own immediate followers. He played a pivotal role in mentoring emerging Rastafari leaders and cultivating connections with Pan-African groups. His extensive travels, commanding personality, and alliances with prominent figures like Marcus Garvey and George Padmore reinforced his ideological influence. Unlike many of his contemporaries who advocated for a distinctly Jamaican nationalist identity, Howell placed African heritage at the core of black liberation. This ideological distinction set him apart from nationalist figures such as Buster Mant and Norman Manley. His message found strong resonance among both the working class and rural communities, uniting marginalized groups in their resistance against colonial domination. However, even Jamaica's independence from Britain in 1962 failed to satisfy Howell, who had long argued that true sovereignty required a complete break from colonial structures. He remained disillusioned by the nation's continued ties to Britain, believing that a more radical approach was necessary for genuine liberation. Howell's activism frequently brought him into conflict with authorities. In January 1934, both he and Robert Hines were arrested on charges of sedition following a public address in St. Thomas. During his trial in March of that year, Howell fervently defended his beliefs, declaring Haile Selassie's divinity and even presenting a photograph of the emperor as proof. However, this defense did not sway the judiciary. He was convicted and sentenced to 2 years of imprisonment by Chief Justice Robert William Lyle Grant. His legal battles did not end there. By 1938, colonial authorities declared him mentally unfit, committing him to Bellevue Asylum in Kingston due to his radical proclamations. Even in confinement, Howell continued his defiant publications, condemning colonial rule, denouncing the Pope as the embodiment of evil, and advocating for black sovereignty. His staunch opposition to revivalist religious movements further solidified his status as both a controversial and profoundly influential figure in Jamaica's socio-political landscape. Among the early Rastafari pioneers, Howell was the most frequently imprisoned due to his unyielding resistance to colonial rule. Yet, persecution never deterred him. Following his release, he took a groundbreaking step in the evolution of Rastafari by founding Pinnacle in 1940, the first fully self-sufficient Rastafarian settlement. Located in Sligoville, St. Catherine, the location of Pinnacle was deeply symbolic, as it was established in the first free village designated for formerly enslaved Jamaicans, reinforcing Howell's mission to create an autonomous community rooted in self-reliance and spiritual sovereignty. At Pinnacle, residents embraced a communal way of life, striving for complete self-sufficiency without reliance on external assistance. To some observers, the settlement represented an experiment in cooperative living and socialist ideals. Quickly, Pinnacle emerged as the heart of Rastafarian culture, a thriving center for both agricultural endeavors and spiritual practice. The community cultivated a range of crops, including cannabis, which held deep religious and ceremonial significance for Rastafarians. However, Jamaican authorities viewed the settlement with suspicion, fearing it as a breeding ground for communist ideology. In 1941, just a year after Pinnacle was founded, police stormed the settlement in a sweeping raid, detaining many of Howell's followers. Though Howell initially evaded capture, he was eventually arrested and sentenced to another 2-year prison term on charges of sedition. Following his release in 1943, he returned to Pinnacle, this time taking heightened precautions. Understanding the growing threat posed by authorities, Howell implemented security measures, appointing guards and watchdogs to protect the settlement from further government intrusions. Despite these efforts, the Jamaican government remained intent on dismantling the Rastafarian stronghold. Throughout the 1950s, Pinnacle endured repeated raids, each one more aggressive than the last. The most devastating assault came in 1954, when a large-scale military operation was launched against the community. This near-total destruction of a settlement forced many of its residents to scatter. Although some attempted to rebuild, Pinnacle never fully regained its former vitality. In 1958, authorities carried out a final raid, forcibly removing the remaining inhabitants and bringing an end to the once thriving commune. Though Pinnacle was physically dismantled, its impact endured, inspiring the formation of other Rastafarian communities across Jamaica. The details of Howell's later years remain shrouded in ambiguity, with conflicting accounts regarding his activities between 1958 and 1960. Some suggest that he withdrew from public life, while others indicate he remained engaged in legal disputes concerning Pinnacle's ownership. On January 23, 1981, at the age of 83, Howell passed away months after suffering a brutal attack near Treadlight Park, not far from his beloved Pinnacle. Despite enduring relentless persecution, his impact on anti-colonial thought and the Rastafari movement remains undeniable. Howell's vision shaped generations of activists and continues to influence discussions on African heritage, self-determination, and spiritual resistance. In recognition of his contributions, the Leonard P. Howell Foundation was established to advocate for the restoration of Pinnacle as a UNESCO World Heritage Site. In a striking turn of history, the same government that once sought to silence Howell later honored him posthumously. In 2022, he was awarded the Order of Distinction, officially acknowledging his profound influence on Jamaica and the wider world. Was Leonard Howell the most revolutionary figure in Jamaican history? From founding Rastafarianism to building Pinnacle, his life was a battle against oppression and injustice. But what's your take? What's his most inspiring legacy? Let us know in the comments below. What part of Howell's story resonates with you the most? And if you could ask him one question about his life or beliefs, what would it be? Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more incredible stories of the visionaries who changed the world. Drop your thoughts. Let's honor Howell's legacy together.